This is Transistor.fm.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Product People Podcast. Justin Jackson here, and we are getting closer to 100 episodes of this show. It's been around for a while. It's been around since 2012, but we have not yet crossed the mighty 100 episodes, and I think we're going to get close. I'm publishing more often, and today I've got a great conversation with Derrick Reimer and Ben Ornstein from over at the artofproductpodcast.com. Man, we really got into it. 3 product people in one conversation. Ben is working on a new pair programming app called Tuple. Derrick Reimer is launching a Slack competitor for developers called Level.app. And of course, I'm working on Transistor.fm. Wow, yeah, it was great. So I've just sharing a little bit of the conversation. To get the whole thing, go over to artofproductpodcast.com and subscribe. Also, before we get into it, my birthday's coming up, and it's become a little tradition for me to have a birthday sale. I'm turning 38 this year, so 38% off on a bunch of things. Product validation checklist is 38% off. Also, all my books, so Marketing for Devs, Jolt, Product Hunt, Hacker News, you can get that in a big bundle for 38% off. And then, of course, like I mentioned last time, the Marketing for Developers course, which you'll only be able to buy until July, is $50 off right now. megamaker.co/birthday if you want those deals as I speak right now. There's only 6 days and 14 hours left. So if you want one of those, jump on it. Lots of folks getting in on that product validation checklist and getting a lot of value out of it too. So check it out. Why don't we get into this conversation? Just a few clips from my chat with Ben and Derrick. Here we go.
We haven't had editing problems, so they're doing. Keep it up.
Keep it up.
Editor
whatever
folks.
you're doing back there. This is,
Yeah,
I like.
keep doing awesome.
I like talking to the editor. That's my favorite thing. Like, hey,
Yeah,
are you
totally.
there? Are you still there? Can you hear me?
The funny thing is, I have no clue who the human is that's editing this. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Becky. We just get like a random email from Becky, but I don't know if that's just an admin or.
or a manufactured persona.
Hi, Becky.
Yeah.
So, welcome to Art of Product, Justin Jackson.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here.
How's it going?
I want to say, yeah, things are great, but things are good. Things are, it feels like there's a lot. It's a lot of work to build something, especially on the side. So I would also say,
tell me about it.
I feel tired and feel like it's going slow and all that stuff.
Totally. Yeah, I definitely want to dig into that. One of my explicit questions for you is like, how's your brain? What's your mental state like? I asked Derrick this too, but I think we'll all commiserate perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a fun week in the land of Level the last few days, because I decided sort of off the cuff to launch a new landing page. And I've been working on it for a little while, doing some copywriting, trying to craft something impactful about kind of the Level value proposition. And I talked about this a little bit last time, but wanted to experiment with leveraging scarcity as a means for attracting new signups onto the pre-launch list.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I had a short long form landing page up on level.app, and at the bottom the call to action was reserve your handle. Basically, like, we're still under development, but you can claim your slice of real estate for the future. Level.app / your username of choice, and submit this form to reserve it so no one else can have it. And that worked exceedingly well. So as of right now, there's 2,300-ish people who have filled out that form.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No way.
So, and I can, yeah.
I gotta say, that's just savvy AF. I just saw that was such a smart move, and then like seeing it work so well, I was like, yeah, that was just well done. Props on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, feel free to like rip it off. Totally.
Oh yeah, no, don't worry.
I certainly was not the first person to do it. So I'm sure I like took inspiration from someone else out there.
I also just like this landing page. That I like that it's like kind of a long form letter. It's almost all words. It has a really strong headline. Remember that time you forgot to open Slack? There's just a lot to like about this. And then, people get to the bottom and it's like, okay, reserve your handle. This is great.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And it's funny how these come, like this landing page came together pretty quickly. And I spent a few weeks kind of just occasionally jumping back over to it and writing some copy and then scrapping it. And there was just like one writing period where I was like, what if I took this angle and I like wrote that headline and then everything else just sort of flowed. I just sort of started to tell a story. And so it was like weeks of time here and there spent on it, but it really came together in an hour or two. And so it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
This idea I keep tossing around in my head is like, should I maybe for the long term be investing in my own design / CSS skills? And it kind of feels like the answer is probably not. But at the same time, I see how you're able to execute on this. And I'm like, damn, I wish we could do that too.
Yeah. I don't know. Justin, do you have thoughts on that?
Here's, I'm going to say something that might upset some people. I think, to me, it seems like design is easier to learn, at least easier to learn the fundamentals than other things. And if you are already interested in having good taste and, so Ben, for example, you've got good taste in lots of other things like music and, you have a high bar for quality. I think your personality would lend itself well to design because there's a lot of rules around it. There's a lot of what makes good design. And if you follow those things, you can learn those fundamentals and basically be good at design. Design feels more accessible for me than programming does. So I ask myself this question all the time. Should I learn more programming? Should I learn more design? And design is one where I'm like, I could read this book or read this blog post and apply a few things and massively improve, my design. Whereas programming, it's just like, I can't get into that headspace. As soon as you say variables and classes and all that stuff, I'm just like, it's just a lot harder for me to get into it. So that's kind of, and it seems like design's something you could work on every day. Like, okay, what am I going to, let me just look at typefaces. Like how can I get better at typefaces? And then, apply something like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of us are like, Steve has mentioned this before when I've talked to him and been like, well, I'm not really a designer. He's like, actually, a lot of us are designers because in one sense, we all sort of have opinions about what we think looks nice and what's usable and what feels nice. And I think the hard part is like being able to connect the two where, you look at something, whether it's well designed or not, but then being able to reproduce it, you sort of have to, you have to acquire those skills, and it's different than just knowing whether something is well designed, but knowing is half the battle. And then that gap. And so I remember when I would try to design stuff, years ago, it would just take a really long time, and it was pretty agonizing because I knew what I was putting out didn't look how I wanted it to look, but I didn't know what next steps to take to get it to feel right. And so it was a lot of like trial and error and experimentation, and I would end up with something, but it would take way longer than it would take a professional designer who could probably knock it out in a day. And then I think it's just through deliberate practice and doing it over and over again, you sort of pick up your little tool belt of design patterns that you like to reach for, and it gradually gets easier.
Yeah. I think the other thing is if you enjoy writing, so for design on the web, so much of the design follows the words. And we just went through, we're building our official webpage for Transistor. And we started with some mock-ups that a designer had made us a long time ago. And they look great, but I wish I had started with the words, because now I'm wrestling this thing and feeling like I'm actually really jealous of what you have with Level, because that is exactly kind of what I would like. That's the form I can see myself pouring into. But now if so much, especially templated design, it's like, there's all these little pockets. It's like filling a cookie tray, and you got to fill everything this way, and it's like, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to start with words. So if you're already a good writer, and you can put the writing on the page, and then you can say, okay, how can I enhance this writing? And it's like, okay, well, I can add padding. Oh, wow, that looks a lot better. I can add more line height. Oh, that feels better. I can increase the typeface size. I can, do all these things, and it just feels better and better and better. Whereas maybe some folks think that design is starting with a blank sheet in Sketch and then, building something. And I've never been very good at that.
It feels like it's an achievable skill set to me. Where it's I think my taste is pretty decent, so that's kind of already there. And I think, like most web things or most modern things, it's never been easier to learn these skills. There are more courses for like picking up design skills and like learning the hairiness that is CSS. All that stuff is more common than ever. So it's like, okay, this is probably not a huge leap to get there, but there are so many things that I could focus on right now. And is that the highest leverage thing? Yeah, it's annoying right now, but like a year from now, will the 100 hours poured into this make sense? Or will it be kind of like, now I'm not doing any of this?
Yeah.
It's tough to say.
Yeah, it is hard.
So Derrick, I saw you get a lot of play on your share this tweet thing.
Yeah.
People signed up.
Yeah. That worked well. And I think it kind of goes back to that lesson we picked up from MicroConf, which is just ask people for a favor in a genuine way. And so that's what I did when they submitted the form. I just swapped it out with like a little emoji, like, sweet, we saved your handle for you. If you could do us a big favor, it would help out a lot if you just, tweet this out to your friends. Here's a tweet button for you. And I haven't got through and counted, but it was quite a few. Like, I was sort of checking in on that throughout the day, and there was a steady stream of them getting spread around.
Yeah. Can I tell you what I think is the essential piece of that?
What?
So there's a lot of folks that do stuff like that. There's Thunderclap or whatever.
Yeah.
This is why I did it, is because I saw other people I knew and respected doing it, and I had a relationship with you. And so I think outside of that context, those kinds of things are much more difficult, because if you're just some random faceless app and you're asking me to tweet something to my audience just because I signed up, I'm not going to do it. There's an emotional job there, which is, I like Derrick. I want to let Derrick know that I'm supporting him. That's a huge one, I think.
Yeah.
And
yep, for sure.
Other folks I like are doing it. So there's this kind of pack. This is acceptable within my group. Whereas if I like did a random thunderclap for a random app, people would be like, Justin, what are you doing? Like, this is cheesy, or, whatever. So I think that's the missing piece. That's not like a tactic people can just take off the shelf and apply.
Yeah.
You've really got to invest in relationships and your profile and all those other things beforehand. So you got to earn the right to ask before you ask.
I think that's a great point. And I think it helps too that like there's the people who were kind of sort of amplifying the message were in our relatively tight-knit community of founders, developers, designers. And so it sort of did help that I think others saw it, and that sort of like led to others then feeling more likely to click the button. Is there any, do you recall, did you see the copy, and was there anything that you would have changed on the ask? I can pull up what the actual verbiage is, but
I changed the tweet just because I didn't want to have the same thing as everyone else.
Yeah.
But I think, there was also something nice about just seeing, it wasn't like, again, sometimes I see those thunderclaps and I'm like, everybody is tweeting this stupid thing. Whereas this was like, oh, another person signed up for Level for Derrick's thing. That's cool. So I think, to me, it was well executed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that point is something that we've actually come to a couple times on this podcast, where the best way to make a thing that works is to spend a few years building relationships and a reputation and an audience, and then try to do a thing. And it turns out it's going to be a lot easier than if you hadn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's different ways to do that. I mean, and there is other ways to do this. Like Ruben Gamez does not care at all about building an audience or a profile or anything. To a certain extent, Ian Landsman is like this. And, they just want to build the product and then find a channel, SEO or something else. But it is one way to stand out is, hey, this is Derrick. You might remember me from the conference. You might remember me from Drip. You might remember me from Twitter. And now I'm doing something new. Do you want to share this? And it's just so personal. I think Nate Cotney, when he had Draft, well, he still has Draft, I think. He did this so well. He had a page with him and his dog on it and just saying, hey, this is me, Derrick, and I'm just a guy building software, and I like to write, I like to program, here's my dog. And that personal approach really stands out on the internet, where, a lot of websites just look like faceless brands. And so I think there's multiple ways to do it, and this is one good way to do it.
Yeah, I think the transparency, the level of transparency that I've chosen to use with this has made the process so much more fun than it would be if I were just trying to I could be going the more anonymous route, hiring someone to write content and produce blog articles, try to build up SEO, try to do paid ads and just get at different channels that way. But getting that real-time feedback from actual humans who are excited about it and feel like they're on board with the journey has been, it's been a lot of what keeps me going on the day-to-day,
Yeah.
I'm also pretty convinced that people like buying from people they like.
Yeah.
I think you will win customers who might have chosen other things just because let's use Derrick's thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. There's, again, I keep balancing this in my head because I know there's other approaches. And I think this is why it's important to identify what you want. What do you want? What do you value? What do you like? And I'm exactly like you, Ben. I like buying from people I like. And so, I've purchased every single thing Jason Fried has ever made, I think. And it's just because I liked his writing from the beginning. I could identify with him. And so his next book that comes out, I'm going to buy it just because I don't even need to read the reviews. I just like him. I like his writing. I'm done. Right. But other people might not buy that way. They might not appreciate that. They might not value that, but that's the way I buy. And those are one of my values is buying from people I know, building relationships. And so, yeah, although I also think that there is just humans in general, and maybe this is what you're getting to, Ben, humans in general respond to people that know them or, have some sort of connection with them. And so that, I think there's something to that as well. If you can be personal with folks and, you can say, like Derrick asking, can you share this thing is almost just a continuation of a conversation at MicroConf. We were talking about where to go for lunch, and then a week later he reaches out on his website and says, hey, can you share this thing? It feels like, oh yeah, sure, Derrick.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's something to that too.
It's also one of those things that you just can't reproduce on the fly or buy or you have to build it the slow way, authentically.
Yeah.
And that makes it a competitive advantage, effectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Slack will never have that feeling for me that helping out my buddy Derrick will have ever. So it's no matter how big their budget or whatever is, it's just you can't compete with that.
Yeah. Do you think, because I've only built really small things, so I've never had to scale beyond that initial group. Do you think eventually you can't do that anymore, or is it a scalable competitive advantage?
Well, I feel like Basecamp is one example of,
Yeah.
I think they still feel very connected to their core audience, and a lot of what their marketing is, they say this, they don't do a lot of marketing deliberately, and they don't care about SEO, and they don't care about a lot of the things that traditional marketers care about, but their biggest form, I think, is like writing Medium posts and tweeting and being just in the community. But I think they're, in so many ways, they're such an anomaly. And so I don't know, like, if they're if they've just really mastered their craft, or if it's really like, or if there's something else special about their, maybe it's them being early, them being so infused in the mind share of our community. But yeah, I look to them for inspiration on many fronts, and that's certainly one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a question of degree. There's a limit to the number of people that you can have dinner with.
Yeah.
Or like spend a weekend with. But I do routinely get people emailing me or tweeting at me who do seem to feel a personal connection. Mm-hmm. Even though like it's been basically entirely one way, but they're like, I've listened to Art of Product, and then before that, Giant Robots, and I've like followed a lot of your work over the years, and it's pretty clear to me that they feel at least some sort of connection there.
Yeah.
And not quite the same as if, we had hung out together, but yeah. I think it's actually fairly scalable, at least at a reasonable level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's like, folks probably feel like they know Seth Godin. Like they feel like, oh, I've been reading his stuff forever, and I feel like I have a connection with him. Or so, yeah. I just wonder how scalable it is, because I don't know. Eventually, that might not be a strategy. And also, we don't really know Basecamp's numbers. We don't know, like, maybe 25% or 10% of their customers know who Jason Fried is, but maybe the rest of them have no idea. And they're just like, this is just a great product. It was recommended to me by a friend. So yeah, it's hard to tell what's going on for real.
Well, shall we continue with updates?
Yeah.
We shall.
It's a fun little digression, though. Let's not. I know. I thought that was good. All right. So it's been a really good week. I actually have pre-sold $700 worth of Tuple accounts.
What? Whoa.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And I have verbal yeses for another 500 on top of that have not come in, but I suspect will.
Wow. And how did you do that? How did you get those pre-orders?
So I have basically been keeping a notes.app note on my phone as I talked to people about this. A lot of it was at MicroConf. People had heard the podcast and they were like, hey, I heard that thing you're making. And when someone would be like, hey, I'm like really interested, I'd say, well, we are going to be at one point running an alpha and it's going to cost some money. But if you're interested, if they seem like a good fit, then I would take down their email. And so I've just been working my way down that list and saying, hey, it's good to see you. Remember that thing? It's happening. Do you want to get in on this?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the kind of the Jason Cohen WP Engine approach of asking for a check before you build it.
Yep, totally. Yeah, it's just sort of like the next step for me for validation, where it's like, yeah, everyone says they're excited, but can I actually get any dollars?
Yeah.
And so I've just been saying, hey, like we're building this thing. We're gonna start alpha soon. I can't tell you when we're gonna have a thing in your hands, but like we are building it right now. We're whistling in code. We're looking for a handful of people. About 20 people that I'm probably going to cap at that number. Mm-hmm. We're looking for people that will give good feedback and use the product. And so here is basically to get in, I'm asking people to buy an annual plan, effectively, saying like, we're going to give you access through the whole alpha plus a year after at a discount over what we're expecting our monthly rate to be. Wow. So what do you think? And
very nice. Question. How many people did you ask and did you get? What was your ratio of no's to yeses?
Really good. So far I have asked 12 people. I got one straight up no. And his no was like, that's actually a reasonable price. I just can't afford it. And so I was like, fine. Then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 paid already. 2 verbal yeses, and then I have 4 that are out that I haven't heard back from.
That's awesome. You don't even have a website for this yet, do you?
Nope.
So you're just going into Stripe and just like creating a thing, and then
yeah. So they have a thing now, which is great, which is like hosted invoices.
Okay.
So I can create an invoice and send it to somebody via email, and they go to like a page on Stripe's site and just fill in their thing.
Wow.
Or they can even accept ACH, which is really cool.
You don't even need a landing page anymore. You just need a spreadsheet with a bunch of people's names on it.
Yeah,
And
pretty much. Yeah, exactly. And a few years of building relationships with people over the internet. But one thing I have been doing is, so we have a landing page mock-up. So I've been attaching a screenshot of that to the email and saying, just so you can see like what we're thinking and what we're planning on.
That's cool.
And I think that probably helps.
It'd be cool if the Stripe app had this built in, because then maybe they do, but then you could have been at the conference and they could have said, yeah, I want to do that. You can go, oh, hey, do you want to pay for it right now? And then you could have just like done the invoice on the app or whatever. Because then it would be immediate. Cool. It'd be like, like, do you...
It's even harder to say no to that in person too. Like that.
It's harder to say no, but then you would instantly get like, their reaction. You'd get, if they had more questions. And it feels like, I don't know, maybe you folks are different, but it feels like if I'm in person and I can't sell you on my thing, then how am I ever going to do that on the internet? Like, you're right there. And I've had people come up to me at MicroConf and go, so tell me, why should I get marketing for developers? And I'm like, and it's hard doing that in person, but if you can do it in person and nail it, then man, you can nail it anywhere. So Stripe, if you're listening, add that to your app. This is how people are using Stripe invoicing.
So we're basically optimizing right now for like get things in people's hands quickly and like keep the validation game going and the feedback thing going.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Ben?
Always.
So I go to Twitter and there's nothing about Tuple on RIP.
Yep.
I go to benornstein.com. There's nothing about Tuple. If I go to your media tweets, there's no screenshots that I can see, at least not in the first little bit. Is that a purposeful decision? Like you're purposefully not building in public, or you're purposefully not sharing too much?
It's sort of a failure is one part of it. Like part of it's just like, no, that's bad and you shouldn't do it this way, and I'm messing up. Part of it is just that like I don't have a visual thing to or like a website or a landing page or anything to share yet.
Yeah.
So it's like I do want to like as soon as we launch our landing page, all of those places will point at Tuple for sure.
Yeah.
Although I take your point and I agree with it, I think, which is like I could still be sharing some things like updates and teasing things, and just screenshots,
even just a pinned tweet or something to say, "Hey, it's Ben. This is what I'm working on right now, and it's not ready yet." But ironically, again, when you've built relationships with folks and and people are kind of interested in what you're doing, they will heart and retweet those sometimes because they're like, "Oh, look what Ben's doing." And they just make great pinned tweets because then you can see, oh, this is what he's up to now.
Yeah, this is not ideal. You're right to point it out.
I think that's good advice actually for anybody is to at least, it's also good practice for saying, you could say, it's like exactly the elevator pitch or the elevator question. Like, hey, Ben, what are you doing right now? Oh, well, you know how screen sharing is a real pain in the ass? Yeah. Or pair programming over the web or whatever.
Yep.
And I'm actually literally like mining my brain for like, what the hell is Tuple right now? I'm guessing. I think it's screen sharing and pair programming.
Remote pair programming is the right way.
And so you know how that all sucks? Yeah, that totally sucks. Well, we're building a tool that makes it way better because of this and this and this. Well, that makes a great pinned tweet, whether you have 50 followers or 1,000 or whatever, that you're practicing telling your story. And I got to get better at this too. Like I still don't always have that even nailed myself. Like, what makes Transistor better? Well, it's hard to articulate those things, but when you practice them, it becomes easier, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I've been holding back because I didn't have somewhere to send people where it's like, I'm working on a thing and you should know about it.
Yeah.
You should know.
Yeah.
But it's like what I really want to, I've kind of been like saving some of that ammunition, I guess, for like, and you should go here and sign up for updates, I guess. But maybe that's,
something you could do too is like the product hunt ship page. that's what I did for a few weeks. Like, and I just set up it's actually up on GitHub, like Level HQ/website, and it's just a static site with an iframe. So I put that on Level.app for a little while. And the nice thing about that is it has a little bit of the social proof built into it, where if you're signed into Product Hunt, it shows who of your friends have also subscribed, and you can import your existing list into there. So, I mean, it didn't really like every time someone would subscribe, I'd sort of watch and see if there's a little bump in like others who maybe saw it on Product Hunt and like also signed on. And there didn't seem to be a lot of network effects happening for mine, which is why I've transitioned off of that to the longer form page, but it at least got me by for a few weeks.
Yeah. There's a few other tricks too. One is you could take a clip of you describing in this podcast what Tuple is, and then you could say, hey, I'm working on something new, check it out. And it's just like a sound clip on Twitter. You could do it the same with video. Here's a little clip of a video. You could, record a phone conversation with your partners. And it's just like the anticipation, like building anticipation and leaving little teases and hints is a massively underrated way to kind of build up to a launch. And just even saying, hey, I'm working on something new, I'll give you a little hint. It's for remote programmers or something. Okay, well, at least I know now. And again, people remember those things. So you're cluing them in, like, oh, Ben's on a journey. I'm going to go on that journey.
Right.
And you probably need more of those. I think most people need more of those than they think they do. Like some people might think Ben is still working full time. Some people might think Ben is, some people might think Derrick's still at Drip. That you need to kind of leave this breadcrumb trail for folks, especially if you've invested a lot in your relationships and profile. People need something to like follow. And you can do that without a landing page or a mailing list or anything. You can just say, hey, I'm working on something new. Here's a little. And Adam Wathan is absolutely the king of this.
I was just going to say that.
Like,
Adam is listening to this going, duh.
He kills me. I mean, I'm a good talker, but he is the best at just going, oh, like, this is interesting. I should just share this little thing. And of course, people find it interesting, right? So,
yeah. And then when you launch, it feels familiar. Like people are like, "Oh yeah, this is that thing he's been working on. I've been hearing about this. Oh, there's that thing that he showed a screenshot of." Yeah.
You people need more time than you think they do. If all of a sudden I just woke up one day and said, "Hey, I launched a podcast hosting application," people are like, "Whoa." But if I tell them 3-6 months ahead, they're all immediately thinking, should I have a podcast? Do I need to host a podcast? Do I know people that are hosting a podcast? Do I, what problems have I encountered with that? Oh, we're in a meeting and my boss wants us to start a podcast for a company. Oh yeah, Justin's starting that thing. It just gives them time to process it as opposed to just surprising them like, hey, surprise, hey, I got something new. Totally. People need time to process things. So when you give them that time, it's in your favor, right?
All right, fine. I'll tweet about it.
Even
this mastermind is brutal.
Is this how long updates usually take? This is
God, no. Here's how long a whole single episode takes.
Listeners are like, what the? So I'm working on a new podcast hosting application called Transistor.fm with my buddy John. We've been doing it. Well, we signed our partnership agreement in February or something, but we've been working on it since January, and he was working on it even before then. So he had built like a MVP that our first customer, Cards Against Humanity, could use. And so they've been hosting their podcast since December, I think. And but we're both doing it part-time. And so John works full-time for Cards, and I have a business. I think actually he's in the better situation because it's so easy to work on Transistor. And my regular business is basically selling this course, marketing for developers, doing coaching calls, doing, like that kind of stuff. And it's really easy to just want to do Transistor. So I think we're both struggling with that a bit. We keep launching new features every week. We're getting closer. We have about 70 early access customers.
Wow. Paying customers?
Paying customers, yeah.
Nice.
I think John wanted it to be 10, but I just keep inviting people. And our initial plan, current plan is that he's going to fly here to British Columbia, and we're going to launch officially in July. So
Cool.
we'll see if that happens. And actually, most recently, what we've been doing, we have a podcast called Build Your SaaS, and we are always kind of like, okay, here's the topic. We're going to figure out pricing, and so in the midst of the conversation, we're like supposed to figure out what we're going to do. And we got into this pricing conversation. We're like, wow, we can't figure this out on air. Like we really need to chew on this. And so, one thing we're trying to do, we're both in our late 30s. And I think probably everyone has this propensity, but there's this propensity to always want to make it seem like you have all the answers and that I've been working with SaaS companies since 2008. Like I should know this stuff. But we're really trying to bury our egos and reach out for help whenever we can. Massively helpful because our initial ideas for pricing were dumb. Like they were just dumb. And it's so funny, I don't know what that saying is. You can't see the forest for the trees or whatever. But when the trees are right in front of you, like you're in the forest and you just can't see, you're looking around and you're in the weeds, having someone else, and sometimes they don't even need to have a lot of expertise, but someone else that can just look at your situation and go, well, there's a lot of other stuff I'm seeing that you're not seeing. And to have a bunch of those conversations, and basically every single person was aligned. They're all like, I would not price it that way. So we were going to price it based on number of shows. Because in the enterprise space, in the podcast enterprise space, that's what people do. Because they're selling to radio stations and big podcast networks, but that's not our target market. Our target market is businesses, specifically tech businesses that want a podcast. And so they're like, this is a bad way to price, and it doesn't. Your value proposition doesn't scale with your main cost center, which is bandwidth. So why are you going to how much is it? Like Cards Against Humanity's had 3.8 million downloads since they launched. It's like, are you guys losing money on them? And we're like, well, we don't know. We might be. They're like, well, you should definitely make your pricing, if you can, it's better to have your main value proposition relate to your main cost center and have expansion revenue kind of go with that, right? So the more, so what they were suggesting is number of downloads. The more downloads you get, the more you get charged. It's also theoretically the main thing people want. Like when we do interviews with customers, we're like, what's the number one thing you want? More listeners. That's what they want. So that's what we're working on right now, and getting closer to that, figuring out what we're going to charge initially, and that's kind of like the last piece. It feels like we have lots more product stuff we want to build, but that's the piece we want to have in place so that we can launch in July.
I take it.
Yeah, I've also been thinking a lot about I called it activation, because actually, and while you're talking, Ben, this triggered something in me, which is you've been able to get people to pay for something that doesn't exist, which is an incredible thing. Like that's and Derrick, you've been able to get someone to sign up for something that doesn't exist, which is incredible. It shows that you've invested all those things that we talked about, like you've invested in community. You've got a hook that is hooking people. And I think all of that stuff's incredible. What I've been thinking about lately, though, is what comes after that, which is, sure, I can get people to sign up. I can even get people to pay for this. But can I get people to use it and keep using it? And I think that's one thing that worries me, that keeps me up at night a little bit, is I'm sure for all of our apps, like every app needs usage, but specifically in podcasting, if people are not creating shows and they're not uploading episodes, that is going to be very bad for our business long term. And so activation and usage is something that's on my mind. And I think in the ebook course space, we get a lot of people who do not activate. They just buy, and we're happy to take their money. But in the long term, it's very difficult to build a business off those folks because if they never use it, they never get success. If they never get success, they don't tell people about it. If they don't, they never want to upgrade. They never want to get to the next step. And because I've been in the ebook course space for the past 2 years, I'm really thinking, man, it's not enough to take people's money. I really need something that I can invest in and that naturally expands as people use it. There's this activation and usage that leads to further revenue, as opposed to me investing in this thing that, sure, I got people's money, but then I'm done.
Derrick, do you want to take this one, or should I?
So I've got some thoughts, but then you can go. So you're building a service, right? And the service is software. You're hosting podcasts, but something that's really kind of interesting about Stripe's strategy is that they're launching Atlas to help you start companies, and they're doing that because they want to make it the on-ramp easier for people to build businesses, which will then in turn turn into revenue that is billed through Stripe. And so that's like they're investing in this other thing that ends up sort of this virtuous cycle of revenue back into their company. So for you, it'd be perhaps something like what can you do as a company to help encourage people to continue creating. I don't even know what this is, if it's education or if there's some software that some technical component that helps with that. Feel free to interject, Ben.
I'm going even one level further, which is you're building a podcast host, but no one wants a podcast host. They want a podcast and they want downloads, and they've already told you that they want a bunch of downloads. So I feel like you need to talk to Brian Castle and talk to him about his done for you, we make a podcast for you for your business service. And I don't know if that's a business you want to run, but that to me is the ultimate answer. It's oh, they didn't actually start making episodes. Well, damn it, we have a plan. It costs a lot. But we make episodes. We make sure you make episodes.
We've already done experiments with that. Do we want to be in the done for you? I think there is something there for sure. I think there's also opportunities in software, but it's likely we're going to have to partner with folks like Castle. My friend Adam Clark has a new company called Podcast Royale that does this, and he's already referring customers to us, so we can see, okay, wow, this is one way to do it, right?
Yep.
And I think there's also, I haven't quite figured this out, but I had one founder reach out to me and say, I've always wanted a podcast, but I want a co-host in the beginning. I want you, Justin, to be my co-host so that I can experiment with this and have some confidence and all. So those pieces are there for sure. Yeah. Although it still makes me worried because, it's hard making a podcast. It's hard doing it every week. And the nice thing about downloads, though, that is encouraging is one problem in the podcast hosting industry is dead shows or shows that are not being updated anymore. And because I can see now all of our new early access users, how many downloads they get. And I've transferred my shows. So Product People, which is a show I update occasionally, is one of the shows I imported. Well, it goes Cards Against Humanity, and then Product People is number 2. And so it's a show that's not updated very often, but still gets lots of downloads. And so there's benefit there. I'm still getting the benefit from those shows. And so this idea that folks, instead of thinking, I only get benefit from this if I'm uploading new shows, instead they're thinking, I invest in this and maybe I do a season and I still get the benefit for a long, long time. If it's, like Seth Godin's startup school, if you ever search startup, it's like super old, never updated. It's still like number one on iTunes. That's still, it's like an asset that just sits there. And, so that makes me feel a little bit better that if we can just get people to make 7 shows and they're getting enough benefit from that, then, they might keep paying for a long time. It's like we've invested in this asset. It's still giving us a return.
Yeah. And I think like as much you can build into the product that demonstrates that people are still getting value out of the content they've produced, the better you're going to be. So with Drip, it was always like, how can we put $ everywhere in the app to show you like this campaign is earning you this much money or this activity is causing this conversion to happen at this stage in your funnel? Because, the more attribution we could do, the more insights we could offer, on like ways to improve or ways to get more people listening, more downloads, more reach. And I think there's probably some opportunities you could do with like mining data that you have, figuring out like, hey, this was your most popular episode and you talked about this and it was this length or this format. Like try doing more of that. I don't know. Like,
yeah, that's a good idea.
I dig it. I understand your fears though. Like so I started a tiny little podcast hosting thing one time. And the thing I found with it was that it was totally an aspirational thing for a lot of people. And it's like, you've always wanted to start a podcast, right? And they're like, heck yeah. And so I'm like, all right, we're going to do it. And then we would, and they would record like one episode and they'd be like, yeah, that's enough for me.
Yeah.
These weren't businesses. These were like, casual people for sure.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like they're like, God, I need a podcast. They didn't wake up every morning thinking like, where's my podcast?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But they want the thing. It's just like anything. So I just signed up for Right Message and I had kind of a joke on Twitter, like how long it took Brennan to get me as a customer. It took him a long time. Like he asked me, I've got like in this one Slack group I'm in, there's like 20 messages from Brennan, like, hey, do you want to sign up? And I'm going to do it for my Mega Maker business. So books and courses. But I got in there once and, fiddled around with a few things and I haven't been back. And now the clock is ticking. Because that initial inspiration is dying, and now it's been a week. So now I'm starting to think, fuck, I paid $99 for this. Like I'm starting to get that feeling that you get when you haven't used something. And it shows like, if I can get some activation, if I can get, and Brennan, if you're listening, this would be a good time to reach out and just set up my account for me. But, like that's a great product. But I just ran into a few things. There was a few things I couldn't do. And I'm like, whatever. I'm done. Right. And it's like that for a lot of products. You can't, this is the death of project management apps is you're already using one and someone says, hey, do you want to check out mine? You're like, sure. And you check it out and you're like, okay. Da-da. But until you really activate, until you get some sort of like investment you put something in and then you get something out. If that doesn't happen pretty quick, then it's just on the back of your mind like, okay, I'm not going to cancel right away because Brennan's my friend. But if 3 months go by and I haven't used this thing, I'm going to cancel. And that, I think all products have that problem. And even going back to the skateboard thing, like you might buy a skateboard thinking, yes, I'm actually going to go and learn to skateboard, but it sits in your room for 2 weeks and then, clothes get put on it. And then, the more it sits there, the more you get guilty about it, the more it feels like a weight on you. And then you're like, forget it. I'm never going to learn how. I'm just going to give this to my little brother.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a really good talk at MicroConf that Justin Mayers did. And at one point he mentioned, kind of offhandedly, we did the math and we realized that customer success people caused such an increase in our activation rates and the expansion revenue that they paid for themselves, that hiring additional customer success people was profitable. And so once we realized that, we just started going nuts on that.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking that for like, maybe they have one at Right Message, I don't know. But like if someone had like been keeping tabs on you and saying, hey, Justin is not actually activated, like I'm going to like reach out to him and maybe do some work for free if I need to get him over that hump.
Yeah. And I think the challenge is it takes more than automated messages. Like I'm
Totally.
so used
Right.
to getting automated messages like, "Hey, it looks like you haven't set up your thing, and then do you want to reach out?" I'm like,
Absolutely.
"No,
Doesn't
I
work.
don't want to do that. I want." This reminds me of like the first SaaS company I worked for was an email newsletter company, and I got started on customer support. And one of the things I realized was if I watched new accounts sign up, and I would just go into their account, set up their template with their logo and stuff from their website, and then they would go into their account and it would be magically their newsletter template would have all the stuff from their website. And people loved it. Like, and exactly that thing. Whenever I did that with an account, they were like, it was like, I don't know, way more likely that they would sign up for a paid plan and stick around. And so I could see that, like customer support people like reaching out and just going, and again, it's almost like you got to be a bit ballsy, like reach out to me on Twitter DMs or something and say, hey, like, can I help you get this thing set up? The automated approach, I don't know. I maybe it works for other people, but I'm just I'm so used to those, pop up intercom things, and
Yeah.
it doesn't feel real. But if there's a real human being like, hey, we just want to help you out and get you started, I'd be like, okay, like I'll do it. And yeah, maybe it doesn't scale, or I don't know, but
that's the thing about Justin Maris is like that. It wasn't just like, hey, we're doing a thing that doesn't scale because we have to. It was like, actually, this makes money.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for them, you could see like once people get it installed and it starts like generating revenue, man, like I'm in, and yeah, it's kind of, again, like I don't know why more consultants don't do this. Is I get pitched all the time about stuff I do not care about at all, but if someone noticed something like where I'm clearly getting stuck and reached out to me and said, hey, like, this is what I do for a living. I just get people unstuck from this thing. Do you want to pay me? I'll be like, yes, like I will pay you for that right now. Cause I'm, that's something that is very applicable at this point in my life. It feels like people, they're not good at recognizing those things where people are getting stuck or they don't care, or I don't know.
Yeah, so many of us want to build automated software companies where we ideally don't have to talk to a single human being.
Mm-hmm.
But like the truly successful SaaS companies, I think, are the ones that, when it makes sense to, are proactively doing as much for their customer as possible and really emphasizing that service component.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful thing.
Was that your experience at Drip too? Like, is that something you leveraged?
Yeah, early on we called it our concierge service, and we would build an email course for you. So like we sort of strategize like what's the minimum path to awesome, to getting value out of the product. And early days when we were mostly centered around just like basic email follow-up campaigns, we would do those for free for you based on, I think we would take some existing content off your blog and put together an email course for you. And then for a while, I think we even did some of the like fully done for you evergreen, like give us some ideas and we'll go off and write a 5-part email course. I think we did that for free for a while, and then we started offering it for $500 maybe. But yeah, that stuff was huge in the early days, and the services component is still a big thing, at least account migrations. And now it's like, Drip is a much more complicated product, but I think there's still like a big service component that we have.
Yeah. How could you use that though, Ben, with Tuple?
I was thinking that as you were talking. I don't know for sure. So one thing I've thought about coming at it from a slightly different angle, which is not quite activation, but more like building the next generation of pair programmers. Because there's some people that feel like they should be pairing, but they don't feel like they would be good at it, or they're intimidated, or they have concerns.
Yeah.
So one thing I strongly suspect that we will be building, either as like a low cost product or for free, is some sort of pairing course or book or something.
Yeah.
So
this is where having a profile and having, a following could be helpful, because if you're talking about pair programming all the time, that becomes the trigger, right? So it's like I'm on Twitter and I'm a Tuple customer, and all of a sudden Ben's talking about pair programming. It's like, oh yeah, I need to do that more. Or I should, or even just a human being like, if you tweeted like, when was the last time you paired with the most junior person of your team? And then you're like, whoa, oh yeah, when was the last time? That's different than an automated message. And maybe that's your key, is just,
sure.
Again, Adam Wathan is always getting people to think about testing and refactoring because he's talking about it all the time. Like, can I swear on this program? I don't care at all about refactoring. Like, but I'm thinking about it all the time because Adam's tweeting it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's providing, as corny as it sounds, it's being a thought leader in the tangential to the technology you're building or the business you're building, right?
Yep. And that's totally where you want to be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where it's like when I made a refactoring course for Rails apps, it was like, yeah, that makes sense. A lot of people think of me as the refactoring guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to now become the pairing guy.
Yeah. All right, there you go for the whole thing, artofproductpodcast.com. As always, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm the letter M, the letter I, Justin, M-I. Justin, if you're listening to this right now in Breaker, leave me a comment and a heart. That would be nice too. But right in the app there, you can jump in at any time. You can say, hey, wow, this was interesting, or I've thought about this, or even right now at the end of the episode, say, hey, thanks for making the episode, whatever you want to say, I don't care. Also, you can do this in another app called Castbox. That's another app for iOS and Android where you can leave comments. I'm trying to jump in there whenever I can. As always, if you've got a new review for iTunes, that helps other people find the show. Still a ton of people downloading this show. It's the second most popular show by monthly downloads on transistor.fm. I switched it over from my old provider to Transistor, and a lot of people still downloading the back catalog. So thanks for listening. I appreciate it so much, and I will talk to you next time I release an episode. See you then. Podcast hosting is provided by transistor.fm. They host our MP3 files, generate our RSS feed, provide us with analytics, and help us distribute the show to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. If you want to start your own podcast or you want to switch to Transistor, go to transistor.fm/Justin and get 15% off your first year.